The Big Bang Theory wants you to remember it as the cozy show about a found family of lovable nerds. But the second you actually pay attention to how they treat each other, that warm feeling starts to crack. Every single person in this friend group is mean. So let me show you how a show about bullied kids turned the whole gang into bullies. Before we get into who the worst one is, you have to understand the foundation, because the toxicity here is not an accident where the writers mess things up. These people bond by insulting each other. It's basically the glue of the show. Their idea of affection is a constant stream of put-downs, and they will tell you straight up that roasting each other is just what friends do, which is the exact line bullies use to excuse themselves in real life. The show even speaks out about it a few times. For an example, in a Zach episode, when Penny calls the guys out for mocking her boyfriend's intelligence, their counter-argument is basically that making fun of people is how they show love. Think about how convenient that is. If cruelty is your love language, then you never have to apologize for any of it, because every insult gets reframed as a joke. And notice who they keep aiming it at, which is almost always whoever is the easiest target in the room, the new person, the slower person, the one too polite to fire back. That is textbook bully behavior in my opinion. It is the engine the whole show runs on for 12 years, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So let me introduce you to the person who pushes that engine the hardest, and you might know who I'm talking about. We all love to call Sheldon quirky, like his whole personality is just being a lovable genius who does not get social cues. But that framing lets him off way too easy. Sheldon is not socially clueless when he is being cruel. At least that's not how I see it. Because he knows exactly where your soft spot is and he aims for it, then hides behind the idea that he simply states facts. Look at how he treats Penny for an example, who he constantly talks down to as the dumb one who could not possibly understand his work. Look at how he runs the apartment like a dictator with his roommate agreement, punishing Leonard for the crime of wanting the thermostat at a normal temperature. And the dark stuff is right there in the open too. In the bully episode, he jokes that they should murder Leonard's old tormentor in his sleep to send a message to bullies everywhere, which is a wild thing to say. And look, I get it. I love the guy myself. I think most of these jokes are funny in the show, but that's really if you don't think twice about what they're saying. However, I think there is one person he goes after more than all the others combined, and that man just sits there and takes it. Here's the one that really exposes the group, because it ran for the entire series. Sheldon decided early on that Howard did not count as a real scientist, and he turned that into a hobby. The reason is petty, by the way. Sheldon struggled in an engineering class once, so he spent a decade taking it out on his friend. He calls engineers the Oompa Loompas of science. He calls engineering the slow younger brother of physics, and at one point dismisses the whole field as noble semi-skilled labor. He makes a whole thing out of the fact that Howard has a master's degree from MIT instead of a doctorate. So Howard is the only mister in a room full of doctors, and Sheldon never lets him forget it. This goes way past one mean joke in one episode, because it is a running campaign of belittling a friend's entire career and education year after year, and the rest of the gang mostly just watches it happen and laughs along. Even more telling, young Sheldon later confirmed the grudge started because Sheldon flopped in an engineering class as a kid, so a decade of him tearing Howard down traces back to his own bruised ego. Imagine a friend who picks at your biggest insecurity every single time you're in the room for 10 straight years and gets a laugh for it. And before you think the men are the only problem here, the women might actually be worse. So, everyone remembers Bernadette as the tiny one with the cute cartoon voice, which is exactly the disguise that lets her get away with everything. The show eventually acknowledged this in an episode where it is revealed that Bernadette is feared at her own workplace. People are terrified of her. They gave her a private bathroom just to keep her away from everyone, and her whole floor had been secretly paying for her coffee because nobody was brave enough to tell her the company stopped covering it. But it gets even meaner though. She yelled at her boss's 7-year-old grandson for losing a 3-legged race and called the kid a wuss and a crybaby. She told Penny that her new pants looked like a saggy diaper, and Penny got so self-conscious she returned them. Then when Penny brings it up, Bernadette immediately roasts her again. She does the mean thing while being told off for the mean thing. Critics at the time even noticed the writers were leaning too hard into making her cruel. That voice is camouflage, and underneath it, she might be the most ruthless person in the entire cast. And she is far from the only woman doing this, because the girls had a whole second mode they switched into when one of them walked away. This is the part that hits home for a lot of people, because we have all been in a group like this. The women of this show present as a tight little sisterhood, the girls' night crew who have each other's backs, and then the moment one of them steps out, the knives come out. Penny and Bernadette will sit at a table and pick apart whoever is not there. Bernadette will call Penny's dress ugly to her face in the same tone as comforting her, and both of them spent years treating Amy like a tag-along they tolerate rather than a friend they chose, rolling their eyes at her, mocking her behind her back, keeping her at arm's length while she is desperate for their approval. Amy is so starved for it that she crosses Penny's boundaries trying to get closer, which is its own problem. But the way the other two quietly look down on her sets the tone. These are not three friends so much as a ranking, with everyone aware of where they sit, and it is exhausting once you notice. Of course, the men do not get to act surprised because their so-called normal one was no better. For most of the show, Penny is positioned as the grounded, kind-hearted outsider who keeps the nerds humble. But then the show admits that she was a straight-up high school bully. In the Speckerman episode, while everyone is swapping stories about being tormented, Penny slowly realizes she was the one doing the tormenting. She pranked and humiliated other girls and never thought about it once. And her attempt to make up for it tells you everything. She calls the people she hurt, gets rejected obviously, and decides to feel better by donating clothes to charity. Then, at the donation bin, she starts taking the nice clothes instead and ropes Amy and Bernadette into it. Her guilt lasts about 1 second before self-interest wins. The point is, the show keeps confirming, person by person, that there is no clean character at this table. The guys roast each other, Sheldon belittles, Bernadette terrorizes, the girls gossip, and Penny was a bully before she ever met any of them. Calling them a wholesome family that just bickers gives them way too much credit, because what they really are is a circle of mean people who happened to find each other and decided that was close enough to love. And the most damning part is what happens after all these reveals. Here is what should have happened on a show with this much runtime. People learn, people soften, the cruelty fades as they become a real family. And while that did happen to some extent, I can't really negate that, there is a simple fact here. They still had the same fights and the same insults in season 12 that they had in season 2, because as I said, that's the glue. Sheldon was still belittling Howard's degree near the end, even though he admitted that he was proud of him for going to space. Bernadette never stopped being feared. The group still bonded by tearing each other down from time to time. When they do apologize, it is almost always because they got caught or because they need something. I'm not saying they didn't grow, they sure did. Especially Howard, who went from a creep to a respectable father and astronaut. But like, real growth means you treat people better when nobody is watching. And this group treated people worse when nobody was watching. They got comfortable being bullies together and called it family. Go read the rewatch threads and you will find longtime fans saying the same thing, that the friendships feel meaner the older you get. Because as a kid, you read the insults as funny roasts, and as an adult, you recognize them as the way people talk when they quietly do not respect each other. Which leaves one last question, and it is really a question about us. The thing that gets me after laying all of this out is that this was one of the most watched comedies on the planet, and it sold this dynamic to a generation as the dream. We watched a group of people insult each other, rank each other, talk behind each other's backs, and terrorize the people around them. And the show framed it as a cozy found family you would be lucky to join. Hell, I always wished for a friend group like them when I was a kid, but that framing does something to you over 12 years. It teaches you that this is what closeness looks like, that constant low-grade cruelty between friends is normal and even affectionate, that the mean one with the cute voice is just energetic, or that picking at someone's insecurities is how men bond. A lot of us watched this during the exact years we were forming our idea of what friendship is supposed to feel like, and a show this huge shapes the culture. Millions of people learned a little bit of how to treat their own friends from this exact table. So when you rewatch it now, you feel unease, because that feeling is just you finally seeing the group for what it always was, which is a circle of former victims who learned the wrong lesson and turned it on each other with a laugh track for cover. The wild thing is they could have been the rare comedy about hurt people actually healing, and instead they became a 12-season demonstration of how cruelty gets passed down and dressed up as love. So yeah, I might have went a bit too deep into this, but that's just my opinion, and if you like unique video essays on these amazing sitcom TV shows, make sure to subscribe and I'll catch you guys in the next one.